Coming up on TekThing, Bitdefender BOX, we got a review, Wi-Fi speed, so many new ways to fail, more storage for your laptop, and the classic Linux or Windows question. All that and more coming up on TekThing. Thank you, patrons. Without your support via patreon.com/TekThing, we wouldn't be able to make the show for you each and every week. Please join the crew that makes TekThing possible at patreon.com/TekThing. Thanks.
I'm Shannon Morse.
And I'm Patrick Norton.
And this is TekThing, where we have something useful in every single show.
Oh my goodness. I have discovered so many new and exciting ways for Wi-Fi to fail.
Have you really?
I have!
What?
You should read Tyler's question.
I am not surprised. Okay, so
goodness.
Tyler wrote in, I recently moved and now have to use a USB wireless adapter on my PC. It is really bad. After the Windows 10 upgrade, my TP-LINK TL-WDN3200 is basically a 2.4 gigahertz only adapter. If you have any pointers, I would appreciate it, or maybe your best picks for an upgrade. I was thinking of going with a PCIe adapter with an antenna base. From Tyler. Those are some good questions.
I love these questions.
Yeah, I know you do.
These questions led to 35 plus rounds of iPerf testing.
Okay.
This is an N600 wireless dual band USB adapter. It's old. It was not particularly beloved in its day.
I used to have one of those back in college.
802.11 PGN. Well, and it's actually probably not quite that old because they had a driver on 2013.
Wow. Okay. So it's like half the age.
For Windows 8.
Okay.
And that sucks, right? And that's something we talk about on a lot of routers. Mm-hmm. Where like they do a driver update and then they never change anything.
Right,
and I'm sure that's because everything was flawless from the factory and can't be improved. And of course their answer is like, hey, you want a Windows 10 driver? Buy a new USB adapter.
Yep. That profit right there.
And I get it, right? I would rather the product I bought this year actually be running rather than them catching up. I don't know. I want everything to work. But in any case, you could try to find a Windows 10 driver that works with the Raylink RT5572 Wi-Fi chip that is in that Netgear adapter. But frankly, it's 2017. We have 802.11ac, and it sucks so much less than 802.11a, b, g, or n.
That's true.
And by the way, if you have a whole bunch of 802.11n in your house, get an 802.11ac router because it will totally change your life, or at least make your Wi-Fi better, which might not change your life, but will make Wi-Fi suck less, which is always a big plus. So I have a ASUS Maximus 8 Impact motherboard with onboard Wi-Fi.
Okay.
I had a USB-AC68 or a ASUS USB-AC68 dual band AC1900 USB 3.0 Wi-Fi adapter.
Okay. This is cute. It has wings.
Yeah. Well, it looks like it's like a little samurai helmet. It really is. It's the goofiest thing, right? Because it folds down like this. If you want to, use it portable, you fold it out like this.
That's cool.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to.
It has cute little bunny ear antennas.
Bunny ear antennas.
Okay.
I always thought of the samurai helmet, but yes, bunny ears. The truth is I still run Ethernet to everything I can in my house.
Oh yeah, me too.
My Apple TV, my Roku box.
Much less complication when you're dealing with Ethernet because you don't have to deal with Wi-Fi ranges and complications of walls between your things.
People walking too close to the antenna.
Right.
That's it. You are totally I think PCIe is an excellent idea. I think you're totally right to want some kind of antenna. Mm-hmm. Wi-Fi antennas you can move around or tweak for the best signal. Not that you can really tweak this one. You can move it around, which is a big deal. It's a must for a desktop. Especially if you're on the edge of the router's coverage. It makes less difference if you're like in the same room as the router, but when you're like 4 walls and 60 feet away, the ability to move the antenna is a big deal.
Yes.
So like I said, I started doing some testing using iPerf. And if you've never seen it, iPerf is this really awesome command line utility that some lovely human being made a Windows version to simplify it.
Oh, yay, a GUI.
Yeah, I'm so much happier with the GUI on this. But basically, on one PC, you start the server. On a second PC, you type in the IP address.
Oh, there it goes.
And look, 206 megabits per second, 170. Basically, it is vomiting data back and forth across your network.
Okay.
And then it'll give you kind of an average for the whole period, like 133. So there's a bunch of stuff going on in this network, and we're in a difficult location. But still, it's not a bad speed, right?
Yeah.
So like I said, I started testing. That's the Wi-Fi test tool or iPerf on a Windows application. And so this is crazy, right? This is a chart I put together. This is what happens when I start learning how to make.
You started charting things?
I started charting things. So like I said, I literally did like 35 rounds of testing. And so we're looking at here, what I call hidden antenna is what happens when the antenna for the Wi-Fi on my motherboard falls behind the monitor.
Oh,
so that was giving me
3.75
megabits per second.
Okay.
Moving the antenna up to the top of the motherboard turned things up to 71.2 megabits per second, which is not great for 2x2 MIMO. But again, it's got like 4 walls and a whole bunch of unpleasantness in my house.
Right, yeah.
Then my friends at Windows suggested I update the driver for Windows 10 was like, there's a newer update for this driver. So instead of using the driver from the motherboard manufacturer, ASUS, I installed the Windows 10 driver and it halved the speed.
Oh no.
So I went from like 71.2 to 36.4 megabits per second.
Help at all.
And then there's a global driver, which is the newest driver for the USB AC68 dongle that we were playing around with its ears a minute ago. And I was like, wow, this really sucks. This is like a 3x4 MIMO driver, and I'm getting 46.1 megabits per second. This is awful.
No.
And then I found the US driver, and the speed went up to 161.5 megabits per second. Yes. So for some reason there was like a global driver. When you go to the website to download it, like global driver. Yeah, I'll download the global driver. Wrong driver. US driver.
Then you got the US one, and it like increased your speed by what? 4 times? 3 times?
Over 3 times.
Wow.
So, and then just to give you an idea of how important distance is, this is basically 40 feet away from the router. This is next to the router.
Whoa.
So this is 161.5 megabits per second across the house behind the walls, and this is 338 megabits per second when I'm in the same room as the router.
Okay, so that's much better.
Yeah. So one thing you want to think about is USB sounds like it should be slower.
Yeah.
Than PCI Express, but it really depends on what's going on with the adapter. Like PCIe versus USB, it's less of an issue than how many MIMO lanes that your router and your Wi-Fi adapter can handle if you're at the edge of your coverage. That said, I would rather have less stuff on the USB bus, so definitely roll with a PCIe Express adapter if you can on your desktop.
Okay.
Yeah, so antenna location, drivers, and distance make a big deal. But let me put everything into perspective, right? Let me close down the chart editor over here. What we're looking at right now is this is the motherboard AC, the AC, 802.11ac in the motherboard, right? Like 71.2 megabits per second. This was like the 161.5 megabits per second in the distant location. Yeah. And this is running Ethernet.
Wow.
810 megabits per second. So just to put everything into perspective, like, that 3x3 MIMO 802.11ac was awesome until you run Ethernet, and then it looks pathetic.
That's a ridiculous increase, man.
Yeah, so drivers can screw you up, distance can screw you up, antenna positioning can screw you up. Having a router that does not support the capabilities of the USB dongle or the USB in your laptop,
that's true,
can screw you up. I was actually pretty impressed with the USB-AC68, the dual band AC1900.
Cool.
Not inexpensive, like $87. If you want the PCI Express version, it's about $100 for the ASUS dual band wireless AC1900 PCIe adapter. That's the PCIe AC68, which I would like to benchmark that versus the USB version.
Yeah, totally.
And then I would like to benchmark
see which one is better.
Yeah, and then like maybe start like running a bunch of stuff over the USB ports to see whether or not the overhead on that impacts it.
Yeah, I wonder.
But remember, Ethernet crushes everything so far in my house. And if you have an older laptop or a Raspberry Pi or something inexpensive, I love these things. Edimax EW781UN. It's an 802.11n Wi-Fi USB adapter. They sell for $9. They are bomb-proof. I really like them. And Edimax is really, really, really good about supporting a whole bunch of operating systems. They seem to be really on top of that.
Which is great.
Yeah, for a desktop, I would go with an 802.11ac router with bunny ears, or some variation of this where you can figure out where to nail it on the wall so it actually gets reception. But if you can run Ethernet,
just do it if you can. If your landlord does not mind you drilling holes, like mine does, which is very unfortunate. So if you guys have a favorite brand of 802.11ac adapters, let us know. Or if you have a question about Wi-Fi or making Wi-Fi faster as well, we love those kind of questions. Fire them out. Ask@TekThing.com. We would love to hear from you. In the past few years, Internet of Things devices have become prone to all sorts of different kinds of attacks from anybody who owns a botnet.
Right.
And this can include anything from your security cameras to your lights that you control with an app to a connected thermostat that could potentially be prone to future DDoS attacks. So there have been a few companies.
Or attack vectors to break into your home network. I like that.
That's
Use
true.
the light bulbs to get into the network.
That is true. So a few companies have come out with consumer-friendly devices that are meant to be physical as opposed to software firewalls between your Internet of Things devices and the net. This one today that I'm reviewing is called the Bitdefender BOX. It comes from Bitdefender, which is that company that does antivirus.
Which I am running on my laptop and my desktop as we speak.
Good choice, sir. Good choice. So you can find the Bitdefender BOX on their website for $199, although currently it is on sale for $129.99. It also comes with a free year of Bitdefender Total Security and free tech support in case you need any help setting this thing up, which you might actually need help setting it up. More on that in a bit.
Oh boy.
It's a really small box that connects physically to your router, and it's supposed to protect your network from any kind of malicious data. It's specifically built for those Internet of Things devices, which are prone to botnets. So it replaces your home DHCP abilities, which are usually on your router, with its own that enable filtering to protect the network. So basically, you can think of it as a built-in physical firewall between those IoT devices and the internet, and it also protects your mobile devices and your computers as well. So it's going to monitor pretty much everything on your network, no matter what device that is.
So 3 things you might want to think about. 1, part of the reason we're protecting Internet of Things is because you're probably never going to get a firmware update for any Internet of Things device in your home, especially the inexpensive ones. 2, DHCP is the thing that assigns IP addresses to everything on your network at home. And 3, you've heard us talking about DNSs and spoofing and filtering DNS.
That's exactly what this baby is doing. So it's going to monitor any kind of sites that your device is pinging out to, and it'll block them if they are malicious. Now, unfortunately, you cannot unblock a blacklisted site.
But I love that website.
I know, right? Exactly. So, but you can add sites via the AV suite that comes with it. It's also going to run vulnerability scans on devices on the network to check if there's any kind of potential vulnerabilities or any kind of new malware that's out there on your network. And of course, since it comes with antivirus, you don't have to run any other antivirus on your machines as long as you install the ones that it has available for it. Since Total Security is the AV package that you get for free for the entire year. Now, I will mention.
Do I have to have do I have to install it on my laptop if I want to leave the house and still be protected?
You have to install a security agent.
Okay.
You have to install a security agent to be able to protect your devices whenever you leave the house. And the security agent is basically a little exe file or an executable file that runs in the background on your machine, and it connects to this at home, letting it know that you're safe. There's also a VPN. There's all sorts of things built into this. So after that first year, it's $99 for the AV security suite. So it's $100, and it protects your devices when you're away from home, like I mentioned, with the VPN. And the VPN, they call it private line. They don't really advertise that it's a VPN, I think, because they want this to be very consumer friendly for, like, you know, if you want to buy this for grandma and grandpa, for example, and they have an iPhone, you want them to not be afraid to deal with a VPN. So they just call it private line that connects to this thing at home and gives you a private VPN. So you set it up by powering it on, and then you plug it into an available LAN port on your Wi-Fi router, which sounds very simple. You download the Defender Box app on your mobile phone like you see here, and then you go through the setup process. Now, luckily, setup was pretty easy, but you might run into some complications with your router. It may need to be manually configured to allow the Bitdefender Box to manage the network. So for example, I have an ASUS router that needed me to log into the admin web interface and then manually turn off DHCP server to be able to allow this to configure itself onto the network. So that might be a little bit of a complication for you.
Not want to walk my mom through that over the phone. However, I'm pretty sure you might be comfortable with that.
Right, exactly. So hopefully you don't run into any complications. It is not compatible with certain routers, and I'll show you the list on here. Network equipment compatibility check. Unfortunately, the ones provided by AT&T and Comcast don't offer the possibility of editing their DHCP server functioning, enabling and disable customizations on their routers. So you can't use this with the Bitdefender box, so make sure before you buy it, you know that it'll work. But if you have an ISP, if you have an ISP that does allow you to change that kind of stuff on an ISP-owned router, then you can always just call your ISP and ask them to disable that. You know if it is good if this little LED on the bottom lights up blue. If it goes red, that means you have a problem. Luckily, since it comes with that 1 year of tech support, though, you can just call Bitdefender and ask them to fix it for you.
So do I want to leave that somewhere I can see it, or will it automatically like shout out to my phone to say things have gone wrong?
It'll send you a notification, but you can also leave it in sight so that you can see the red LED. Luckily, or not luckily, the LED is rather bright, so and you can't turn off the LED. So don't put this in your bedroom and assume that you can go to bed at night if you have complications and the red one is showing up on there. So keep that in mind, everybody. All right, so once it is all set up, it starts scanning your network for your devices, and then you can customize your settings in the application. Now, there is no web interface at all for the box. It's all just done in the app, just for Android and iOS. There is no Windows Phone app, unfortunately. It works alongside Bitdefender's software products as well, so if you already bought the software package like you did, you can buy the Bitdefender box and still get that free add-on of 1 year of the AV.
Okay.
It'll just get tacked on to the end of your subscription,
cool.
Which is very, very friendly. Now, once your devices are registered with the box, it will list them all under this guest listing. So a guest is somebody that comes into your house as a guest on your network.
Okay.
This is not considered a guest network, separated, but it is the same network. It's just listed as a guest that shows up in your profile. And then you can go through and manually add devices to your family instead if they're things that are constantly being used in your household and that you own, basically.
I'm envisioning people installing this and being like, what is this? And then finding a whole bunch of hardware they didn't know existed in their children's room.
Right? So guest devices are protected in your home, and then family devices are protected in the home, but they also get access to that VPN option along with device management, which lets you manage the box from the new family device.
Cool.
So if you take this out into the real world, like your phone or your PC or whatever, you can manage the box on the go, which is really cool. So some real world use. It is a very, very simplified application design, so maybe power users might not like the fact that you don't get a lot of customizations. I was not necessarily comfortable running malware against the box since I only have a home network to test this on. I don't have a lab network. But folks that reviewed it as well at the really big companies, they were able to block malware efficiently and had no issues with the Bitdefender box when it came to blocking that malware.
This is a good thing.
Yes, it's a very good thing since that's what they're selling it for. So as with any defense software though, I do want to mention it may not detect brand new attacks, but you still get notifications on mobile whenever an attack is actually detected and is actually blocked.
Cool.
So there are also a few cons. There is no 5 gigahertz on this version. Bandwidth is 100 megabits throughput. So I really wish that it was gigabits per second, but it's not. And it does not protect your guest network if you have a separate guest network. So it is a single core 400 megahertz MIPS processor, that's MIPS, 16 megabytes flash memory, and 64 megabytes DDR2 RAM, which is actually pretty normal for smaller routers.
Right.
So that's not any kind of difference.
If you were building a PF-Sense router, they would basically be like, you can use this for yourself when you're traveling.
Yeah,
They wouldn't want you to run a processor this slow.
Yeah, so that's pretty normal for those smaller routers. It does include 2 10100 Ethernet ports, which are located on the back. Of course, one of those is going to be full because you're going to plug it into your router. There is a power port as well, and there is your reset button, which is right on the back as well. Now, once you have it running, it's pretty hands-off. The main app page will show you continually how much traffic it is protecting on a day-by-day basis, and if it's seeing any potential threats. And then if you want to refresh that data, you just have to restart the app. If you decided to remove it from your network, you must click Remove Box in the app before unplugging the box, or you might deal with some network connection complications that will mess up from your original router trying to find where it is and throughput all that data through it. So you might have an issue there. You can also set it up as a standalone router, but I found this to be pretty bad, honestly, as far as connection. When compared to my standalone ASUS router that covers my entire apartment with normal speeds at around 100 megabits per second download, I noticed significant drops in speed when walking away from the box when being used as a router. So it dropped when I walked to the second floor completely. It would buffer YouTube videos in the room right next to it where it was. And according to speed tests, my speeds when connected were 54.56 megabits per second down and 8.02 megabits per second up, which was a huge decline from what I'm normally used to. Now, when connected to my router, I got a drastic increase to my normal speeds, which are around 99.63 megabits per second down and then 10 megabits per second up. Now, for the VPN, it was very similar to PCIe VPN when running on my phone. I didn't see any differences there with the speeds. Of course, those speeds will vary depending on where you are. Now, lastly, I do want to mention too, this is the version that they have out now. I heard down the grapevine there might be a second generation box by the end of 2017, but currently they do not have one out. I'm hoping that the new one will have an increase in speeds and maybe faster RAM and things of that nature, but right now, this is what we got. But I think it is really cool.
Especially if you have a whole bunch of stuff that you're worried about being attack vectors for your network.
Exactly. I think it's very cool. I think it's great that there's companies out there trying to design devices that are protecting IoT, because right now, the IoT sector is not protecting themselves. So we need to find an answer to that problem, and right now, these are really good answers to that for consumers.
There you have it.
Yeah.
We love your tweets and your emails. Keep sending them on out to ask@TekThing.com. And hey, if you want to be part of the crew that makes TekThing possible, please contribute to the show at patreon.com/TekThing. $1 an episode would be killer, and it gets you access to our new patron-only build videos. $5 an episode gets your name in the show each and every week right behind us, and $10 gets an invite to our monthly patron-only hangout. Thank you so much for supporting TekThing, no matter how you do it. We got an email from Dan who writes, I'm in the market for a new laptop, but I don't need a powerful one, ideally a 2-in-1, and I'm leaning towards a Surface. Here's the issue, drive space. I don't want a high-end system. I do want an SSD for the main drive, but I also want space for all my pics, home movies, and music. 256 gigabytes would leave me room to grow, but if I get a Surface with a 128 gigabyte drive, an option I'm fine with, what is the ideal way to extend the space? A flash drive I can always have mounted? An external I plug in as needed? My concerns are durability, longevity, and what works best with my cloud backup Backblaze. Am I going about this wrong? Do I just need to suck it up and get a high-end system that's more power than I need and more money I don't want to spend? Dan in Shawnee, Kansas.
All right.
You don't need to spend extra money. You don't need to suck it up and spend more for a system you don't need.
Nope.
But if that 128 gigabyte SSD configuration also has 4 gigabytes of RAM, I would suggest you suck it up and spend more to get a Windows machine with 8 gigabytes of RAM.
So my recommendation would be get an external hard drive. It will last you a long time if you buy a good one, and Backblaze will work with them too. In fact, Backblaze has a whole write-up on how to use Backblaze along with backing up external hard drives.
Nice.
And it looks relatively simple because it's all automated as long as you keep it plugged in every 30 days. So you just plug it into your computer every 30 days at least, and you should be good to go. And they also recommend information here, which I'll put this link in the show notes, as well about backing up to external hard drives. A few of the options.
Why it's not enough.
Why it is not.
Why you should spend money on Backblaze, and you should have offsite backup.
Yes, exactly. So one of the ones that I would recommend as far as external hard drives would be the Seagate Expansion 1 terabyte portable external hard drive. Are you pulling one out right now? Do you have one? See, I just used mine, and I think it's locked in a safe right now because I'm weird like that, but there you go. That is one of the portable 1 terabyte external hard drives. Luckily, these are pretty cheap too. The 1 terabytes are $54.99. Again, those are hard drives. They are not solid states, but it is USB 3.0. I use it all the time to back up our videos, and the speeds are quite good. So I am very, very happy with this option. There are a few other options available on Amazon, and this is another one that I used to use, one of their older generations. It's the WD 4 terabyte black My Passport portable external hard drive. I would recommend not using the software that comes with it because it's janky. and just sticking with wiping it completely and using Backblaze with it. But this one is also rather cheap. You can get a 1 terabyte for $57.99. So a very comparable price, and both of those are really good options.
So yeah, I literally have two 2.5-inch hard drives in my bag, a 2.5-inch SSD that I pulled out of my own machine in an external enclosure, and oh yeah, an old M.2 SSD from a laptop I don't have anymore. All in my bag right now. I've upgraded like M.2 and NVMe drives on a couple different laptops.
Yeah.
Definitely, if you want storage on a laptop like the Surface, buy it up front, because you can upgrade the SSD in this. iFixit, who is not currently a sponsor but has been in the past, has an amazing video on how to do this. You have to basically unglue the glass, and then you dig and you dig and you dig, and
wow.
And then you get to the micro SD, and then you pull it out.
So what you're saying
not micro SD, the
not
SSD.
user-friendly.
No, this is I've had to do the whole thing where you heat up and soften the glue to get the glass off of the top of a tablet.
No.
It's emotionally traumatizing. So I actually like really tiny micro SD card.
Yeah.
Why do I keep saying micro SD cards? Really tiny thumb drives for keeping music and movies on. I used to have a laptop with a 128 gigabyte SSD drive that I couldn't afford to upgrade, so I started keeping one of these SanDisk UltraFit USB 3.0 flash drives plugged into it 24/7. They're pretty amazing for the money. You can still get a 128 gigabyte version for like $40 from SanDisk.
So cheap.
Yeah, the 64 gigabyte is $23 on Amazon. You can't get the 128 gigabyte version from SanDisk anymore, but there is one from Samsung that again sells for like $40.
Nice.
And I have literally had this in the backpack of doom on and off for 3 years, plugged into the side, just like this.
I think the best thing about them is that they're not completely flush with your laptop, but you're going to run less of a risk with those kinds than you would with a longer flash drive that might get broken off.
Yeah,
so those are much nicer.
Yeah, this I wouldn't worry about. You know, I'm sure there are hardware engineers out there right now going, "Don't leave anything in your USB ports in your backpack."
Of course.
Oh my goodness.
Let us know if you have any recommendations as well for him. We would love to shout him out in a future episode. You can email those, ask@tekthing.com.
Spats emailed ask@tekthing.com. I just bought a new Dell XPS laptop and cannot decide whether to install Linux on it or just leave it with Windows 10 OS. I've done some internet research. It could be dual booted or run a Linux virtual machine within Windows or run a pure Linux laptop. What antivirus and malware software can be run on Linux? I know no OS is secure and free from attack. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Keep up the good work. Spats.
Okay.
First thought, dual boot. Or run a Linux VM in Windows. If you're not a Linux maven, switching to Linux will either A, make you a Linux maven, the deep end of the pool theory, or B, have you quickly reinstalling Windows.
That's true.
You, however, are the Linux maven here. You're running Linux on a daily basis on this laptop.
Yes.
You live La Vida Linux.
I live La Vida the Linux, and guess what? I don't have any antivirus or malware running on this machine. And the reason why, now I'm sure there is antivirus and malware, anti-malware system software running available for Linux machines out there, but I don't use it, and the reason why is because this is not an attack vector. Because Mac and Windows specifically, is so popular and it's so mainstream, that is the attack vector that attackers are going to look out for. Whenever you see botnets, you see DDoS attempts, you see scripts, you see executables, you see Windows Office macros that have scripts built into them that are malicious. All of those things are built for Windows machines. With Linux, yes, you do see like kernel issues and things like that, but Linux is constantly updated. It's very good about that, especially if you get one like Ubuntu, which is super popular. But because it is not mainstream like Windows, you don't see attacks for it. I've never had somebody try to hack this thing except for like physically try to plug a USB rubber ducky into it, which, you know, just make sure that it never leaves your site.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody is pissed off enough at you, they will figure out a way to attack your machine.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if it means beating you to half to death on the street and taking your laptop.
Exactly. So I don't worry about viruses or malware being installed onto this machine just because it's not an attack vector. And any of my security friends will tell you the same thing because it is Linux.
Security professional, no AV or any malware on Linux.
Right.
Security professional, I mean, red team testers, nobody that you know that
Nobody
runs
I know.
Linux runs any kind
No.
of antivirus or anti-malware.
Yeah, exactly. And when you asked about dual booting, or if you want to use a VM with Linux, or if you want to just install it completely, I would recommend, for me, I always use hardware versions of Linux, so I like to boot into Linux straight from the hardware because I run into issues with like wireless adapters and stuff like that, and Linux sometimes gets wonky if you try to use a VM with it. And also because Premiere does not work well in a VM if
Right.
I wanted to run Windows in a VM, for example. So I like to run Linux just on hardware itself so I can boot straight into it. But if you are brand new to it, that environment, I would recommend either running a VM if you're not too worried about wireless adapter complications and stuff like that, which you probably won't have issues with on Dell machines, or dual booting if you have enough space on your computer, because you will be required to have that space on your hard disk drive for not just one operating system, which will take up, I don't remember how much Windows 10 takes up, like 60 gigs, something like that, and Linux as well, which is going to take up additional gigabytes. So keep that in mind as well.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Dell XPS, Dell as the Developers Edition. If you are thinking about
That's
running
what this
Linux
is.
on a laptop and you don't know somebody that already has Linux running on it, do a search. Make sure you can actually get drivers for everything on that laptop.
I love the XPS. It's a great machine. I think you'll be very happy with it. Now, that about wraps up this episode. But remember, once in a while, put down your phone, step away from the screen, close your laptop, and do something analog. For example, I got a tweet from JW Travel 1 who said, @Snubs, now this is analog, no electronics used at all. And this is amazing. It looks like a Disney puzzle, a huge puzzle.
Yeah.
And if you scroll down, it's actually a Japanese puzzle. And he sent us a picture of the box. There you go. Scroll down a little bit more. Look, you could even translate Japanese while you're doing the puzzle as well.
1,000 pieces.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yay.
I love doing puzzles. That's such a great one. Thank you so much for sending that in. Good to hear from you as well.
Oh my goodness. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're noticing a lack of coverage on some incredible technological event that happened this week, it's because, well, she's at DEF CON. I'm in the middle of the woods somewhere in the Sierras, and we are pre-recording this show.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being a part of TekThing. I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Shannon Morris.
We'll see you next week.
What are you doing?
Weird.
We're not here. We're pre-recording.
This is like...
Oh, if you're still listening, we will most likely be having a meetup either tonight or tomorrow night in Las Vegas for Hack 5.
And there's
If you
a
are
new
around.
doctor.
Hit up hackacrosstheplanet.com, and yes, there is a new doctor. Woo! I am so excited.
And she's a woman.
And she's a woman! Jodie Whittaker. I've never seen her before.
She's a pretty good actress.
Yeah, cool.
There's talent there.
Yeah.
Mad talent.
Mad talent.
Mad talent.
I'm so excited.
I'm gonna try to watch Doctor Who again.
You should.
I've never gotten through a complete episode of Doctor Who.
Oh, just no. I better not say
Exactly.
it. I'll make people mad.
Someday.
I was gonna be like, just skip blah, 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 blah. But then somebody will be like, that's my favorite doctor. No.
That's the most important one.
I'll be like, oh man, sorry.